Well, hello everybody, bonsoir tout le monde. Ce soir, encore c'est en anglais, mais on a des sous-titres français pour les vidéos. OK, alors ça va à peine de rester. So anyways, I will continue in English and welcome everyone again. I'm going to make sure that some people have a chance to come in. And tonight's really important because what we would like you to do is to think. Okay, we need people to start critically thinking and to be prepared for everything and anything. We're not talking about a boogeyman here. What we're trying to do is just to make sure that everybody's prepared for, like I said, everything and anything. And right now, we couldn't have more of a perfect timing for what the CPU stands for. So I'm just going to play a small video so that people get to know exactly what we are about. And we'll be right back.
Attention, Canadians. Do you feel disconnected from our current political system? This could be our last chance to take a real legal stand for our rights. It's time to shift the political power to its rightful owners, the Canadian citizens and Indigenous peoples of Canada. Dive into our history, understand the need for change, and embark on the quest for true democracy. Are you concerned about our nation's commitment to human rights and self-governance? The power shift to freedom aligns with vital treaties and international laws enabling us to claim our rightful place as collective head of state. We advocate legally replacing the Crown, King Charles III, and our partocracy system with a true democracy, the peoples as the true collective head of state with veto power over our governance, to ensure your voice counts more than party interests. When our national collective civil and political rights are respected, your influence on policies will be direct and impactful. Join us on this noble struggle to make every Canadian and Indigenous peoples a meaningful participant in our future as collective head of state, which was legally owed and kept from us since the patriation of our Constitution, an official decolonization from the United Kingdom of 1982. It's time to correct the past of our government's lies and omissions to the people of our great country before it is too late. People 15 years old and over can sign our Canadian People's Referendum at canadianreferendum.ca and unite for our rights as the collective head of state in our Constitution. Together, we can be the example in reshaping Canada's future, not just for us, but for all peoples worldwide, once and for all. Are you ready to be part of this transformative movement? Join the Power Shift to Freedom movement by the Canadian People's Union and be part of a bold vision for Canada's future. Visit thecpu.ca for more details. Embrace and face the change required on your part to shape our future.
Okay, and I'm back, and that was our housekeeping for tonight. But anyways, the reason why I want to do this live stream is because there's a lot of action going on worldwide, not just in the United States. For people getting ready with the inauguration, but there's protests down in the States. There'll be protests again tomorrow, right up until Monday. And the most interesting one, though, is the protest in Tel Aviv, okay, in Israel. So that protest, even though Trump and Bibi are trying to say that, oh, it's Donald Trump that brought the ceasefire. Actually in Tel Aviv, the military and the people are protesting against Netanyahu. Okay, Bibi Netanyahu. And the military drafted a letter, and then they all signed it, and they said that they were fed up of being used for political power, and for extra territories and stuff like that, and that they were no longer going to stand for it. And that's what is bringing down the war in Gaza, where Israel is stopping, is because the military has walked away, and as well as the people. So they want Bibi out. So they're making it look like, to everybody nationally, that, oh, everything's good, and Bibi's still in the good spot in Israel, which is he's not. So we have to really be careful with what we're seeing. And then I was seeing that on YouTube. There's a lot of Canadian websites that have come up, news websites, and I'm telling you, do not believe them. These are, I had to ask them, like, is this satire? Because the BS coming out of them is just unbelievable. So I don't know if they're trying to get together and trash YouTube, or trying to make us all look crazy for the people who believe what's being said on those channels. But please be careful. And what we need is really informed Canadians. And, I'm the first one that I could say that I'm judgmental, but it comes from a lot of years of learning, a lot of stuff that I've read and seen. And you always have to look at both sides of the coin before you make a decision, right? So this is what I'm trying to promote, and make sure that Canadian citizens are well educated as far as to what we're doing and why it's so important to be doing it, and why timing is everything. Because right now we can, prorogation and all that works in our favor, people. And with what we're doing, you don't need to leave home. You don't need to protest, because protests really end up nowhere. And eventually you have to go home anyways, and you have to get back to work, and you have to start feeding the kids, and, so on and so on. So, it's good to be able to let people know how you feel, and that everybody's standing up against the government, and all this. But at the end of the day, it's not a solution. And we offer a solution, and it's a legal solution. And I've explained this over and over again, and I'd be more than happy to explain it to the government. I'd be more than happy to explain it to the senators. I'd be more than happy to talk to the bar and all of the justices, because we have all of the proof that yes, we're in our right. And yes, on April 17th, 1982, the country fell directly, legally, into the hands of the people. We are the ones that are supposed to be the collective head of state. We wouldn't have chosen somebody else, knowing that the natural resources are all ours. We get to have a final say here in Canada, not an absentee king or a governor general that doesn't even know what her job is. So we know exactly what it is, and we want you to know exactly what it is. But you need to start reading, and you need to start educating yourself if you're serious about wanting to save this country. And there's many things coming. I thought my camera was good, but there's a lot of things involved here, and people need to be well informed, and not to jump to any conclusion, not to make ad hominem attacks, not to do all kinds of stuff. And if you'll notice that we're kind of, I've kind of walked away a little bit from posting on Facebook, because a lot of times people will make comments, and it'll get us more shadow banned and blocked and all kinds of things. So in order to kind of stop that, I'm not allowing anybody to be able to write in our posts. Okay, so it's not you, it's not anybody else. I've decided that there will be no more comments being made in the posts. And I'd rather for you to listen to what we're saying, instead of trying to type all kinds of things, or putting your feelings, or vent, or, post somebody else's useless links that doesn't give us a solution. So we have the solution. We are a not-for-profit corporation. We're not a Facebook group like all of the other groups, or whatever groups you might be with. We are a corporation that can go against the government legally, that we can go against other corporations. And that's why we had to make sure that we were registered to be able to do that. okay, so that we can protect Canadians, we can protect our future and all of our loved ones and this country for our children and their children and all of the other ones to come. So please bear with us. I'm going to now go and show you this video, and I want you to just keep in mind that this is not to scare you, but you need to be ready, because there's a lot of things that you don't know about in regards to public-private partnerships and when they started and who started them, and as well as what's behind them and what does that mean at the international level. Okay, as well as the North American Union, the Security Prosperity Partnerships Agreements. So a lot of you might not even know about that, but you're making comments without knowing exactly where it's coming from. And people who say that oh, please, Mr. Trump, come and save Canada and make us the 51st state. Please stay off our websites. We don't, or get educated. Because it's wasted energy. And if you're that much of a coward, move to the States. Okay? If you're that much of a coward that you won't fight for your country, move to the States. I would rather die than become an American, than allowing our country to go to waste for a country that only wants our natural resources to fill the pockets of the elites. Okay? So I'm ready. Are you? So if you want to be ready, make sure that you know exactly what's going on in the world. Make sure that you know exactly who's saying what and why. Because if you don't, you're going to be misled. And then understand how to read between the lines and what doublespeak means. Okay? So I'm going to leave you with that. And we're going to proceed to this here. Enjoy.
People there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen.
The notion of the United States acquiring Greenland has resurfaced under President-elect Donald Trump, reigniting a mix of intrigue, criticism, and debate. Greenland, the world's largest island and a strategic Arctic territory, has long captured U.S. interest due to its vast natural resources and geopolitical importance. Trump's recent comments on his Truth Social platform, boldly stating, "Make Greenland great again," and calling U.S. control of Greenland an absolute necessity, have propelled the issue back into the spotlight. This isn't the first time Trump has expressed interest in Greenland. In 2019, his proposal to purchase the territory was met with outright rejection by Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen, leading Trump to cancel a planned visit to Denmark. At the time, Frederiksen described the idea as absurd, underscoring Denmark's firm stance on Greenland's autonomy and its ties to the Danish realm. Greenland, which transitioned from a Danish colony to a semi-sovereign territory in 1953, has consistently maintained a distinct identity and governance under Denmark. However, Trump's latest remarks suggest a more aggressive stance. In a press conference on Tuesday, he declined to rule out military or economic actions to pursue U.S. interests in both Greenland and the Panama Canal.
Let's start, if we could, with your references to Greenland and the Panama Canal, so forth. Can you assure the world that as you try to get control of these areas, you are not going to use military or economic coercion?
No.
And can you tell us a little bit about what your plan is? Are you going to negotiate a new treaty? Are you going to ask the Canadians to hold a vote? What is the strategy?
Yeah, I can't assure you, you're talking about Panama and Greenland. No, I can't assure you on either of those two. But I can say this, we need them for economic security. The Panama Canal was built for our military. I'm not going to commit to that now. It might be that you'll have to do something. Look, the Panama Canal is vital to our country. It's being operated by China. China. And we gave the Panama Canal to Panama. We didn't give it to China. And they've abused it. They've abused that gift. It should have never been made, by the way. Giving the Panama Canal is why Jimmy Carter lost the election, in my opinion. Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You look at, you don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen. And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people are going to probably vote for independence or to come into the United States. But if they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
You said you were considering military force to acquire Panama and Greenland. Are you also considering military force to annex and acquire Canada?
No, economic force. Because Canada and the United States, that would really be something. You get rid of that artificially drawn line, and you take a look at what that looks like, and it would also be much better for national security. Don't forget, we basically protect Canada. But here's the problem with Canada. So many friends up there. I love the Canadian people. They're great. But we're spending hundreds of billions a year to protect it. We're spending hundreds of billions a year to take care of Canada. We lose in trade deficits. We're losing massive. We don't need their cars. You know, they make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit. We don't need the cars. We don't need their lumber. We have massive fields of lumber. We don't need their lumber. We have to unrestrict them because stupid people put, restrictions on, but I can do that with an executive order. We don't need anything they have. We don't need their dairy products. We have more than they have. We don't need anything. So why are we losing $200 billion a year and more to protect Canada?
Greenland's geopolitical significance cannot be overstated. The Arctic territory is rich in natural resources, including rare earth minerals, and holds strategic military importance, particularly as global powers like China and Russia intensify their presence in the Arctic region. Yet, any attempt to assert control over Greenland would not only strain US-Danish relations, but also provoke backlash from Greenland's local government and its people, who have shown little interest in becoming part of the United States. Popular investigative journalist Whitney Webb believes there is a bigger, yet-to-be-disclosed reason why Trump and his new buddies, like Tesla CEO Elon Musk, want Greenland to be a part of the United States. In one post made on Elon's social media platform X, Whitney argues that the interest in Greenland is less about national security and more about the region's vast mineral deposits and the interests of billionaires like Musk. Her post reads, "People should consider that arguably the main interest in Greenland, and also likely Canada as well, from the Trump camp, and Musk is related to vast mineral deposits, particularly those necessary for the energy transformation and EV revolution that is directly tied to the business interests of Musk as well as other prominent big tech figures. For example, aside from Musk, Jeff Bezos, who recently gave very generously to Trump's inauguration fund, backs a firm called Kobold Metals, along with Bill Gates, Reid Hoffman, and Mark Andreessen. This firm is drilling in Greenland for EV-related minerals. Northern Canada also possesses significant deposits of minerals essential to EV production. The digital transformation that these Silicon Valley oligarchs are attempting to manifest would, admittedly, require all of the known deposits of lithium, nickel, cobalt, and several other minerals across the planet. The US itself is not necessarily rich in these minerals, but some of its neighbors are. If you are cheerleading for this, be aware that 1. It will help accelerate the sustainable development digital transformation that needs these minerals specifically. 2. It is not in the interest of the public of any of these countries, but instead in the interest mainly of American tech billionaires. 3. It will devastate the environment of Canada and Greenland. 4. Boosting access to EV metals will also likely require existing incentives to purchase EV cars in the US to stay. so these mining ventures have a high ROI. Trump has spoken about removing them, but his ties to Musk and other big tech billionaires suggest it is unlikely. Whitney has also been ringing the alarm about Silicon Valley oligarchs like Mark Zuckerberg and Peter Thiel, who are suddenly trying to rebrand as libertarian. Thiel, a co-founder of PayPal and Palantir Technologies, recently posted an op-ed titled "A Time for Truth and Reconciliation," where he raised lots of questions about government-sponsored censorship and misinformation during the pandemic. Here is Webb's reaction to Thiel's rebranding attempt. Her post reads, "These Silicon Valley oligarchs trying to rebrand as libertarian, even though they are fused at the hip with the U.S. national security state, and acting like they are all now outraged with Epstein, even though they all met with him, should be easy to see through. Silicon Valley and the deep state are one and the same, and this should be a clear indication that the deep state itself is trying to cloak itself in a libertarian MAGA veneer to hurt Americans who would normally dissent into supporting the same policy agendas they have been wary about for years. The deep state is rebranding itself, and many will cheer it on as winning." In her post, Whitney warns further that trust in the public sector has been at an all-time low post-COVID, and the effort to rebuild trust means moving into the private sector to finally unveil the public-private partnership that governs us. She warns Americans to stop focusing on the words of politicians and these Silicon Valley oligarchs while paying rapt attention to their actions. "Actions absolutely speak louder than words," she concludes in the post. Like Thiel, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg has also been trying to rebrand and remake his social media platform to suit the incoming administration. Whitney warns that this is another big sham. Zuckerberg recently appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast, during which he insisted that the Biden administration pressured Facebook to censor posts on vaccine side effects. Responding to this piece of information, Whitney wrote, "The people who will use this podcast to tell you Zuckerberg has changed and is now ultra-based will also be selling you Meta's metaverse. Just give it a year or two. Zuckerberg isn't and will never be your friend, and Facebook/Meta was always an operation of the NatSec state." When asked if she believed Rogan is a part of the PSYOPs, Whitney added, "Well, I certainly think it's interesting that Rogan's pal and UFC head Dana White joined Facebook/Meta's board just a few days before this interview." In another post that has almost 40,000 likes on X, Whitney wrote, "If you fall for the Zuckerberg rebrand, you could probably fall for anybody's rebrand at this point." Whitney's final note of warning reads, "If the powers that be know that people have stopped trusting them, which has now been openly telegraphed, they will manufacture heroes and rebrand old ones while also retooling the sales pitches for their policies to fit the interests/views of the demographic that has been creating the most resistance to those policies. The op is in full swing, don't be fooled. Remember, pay attention to the policy and the promoted solutions, not to rhetoric, and it will be much easier to sift through the BS." Do you agree that this is another giant PSYOPs, and Americans are already falling for the trap? Please share your thoughts, comments, and observations in the comment section below. Also, ensure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.
We are stronger and better when we work together, the three of us.
The United States, Canada, and Mexico together form a group of countries with often divergent views and issues. However, on a global scale, geopolitics and business can unite even the fiercest enemies quite quickly. And here is the question of what would happen and whether it is possible for these three North American countries to ever unite with each other into one big superstate or North American Union. Despite appearances, this is not a vision that is as unrealistic as it might seem. Some experts consider this scenario not only realistic, but almost certain. Since at least the mid-19th century, numerous concepts for a union between Canada, Mexico, and the United States have been proposed, some of them involving countries in the Caribbean, Central America, and even South America. Such a movement was the North American Technate in the 1930s. which advocated a nationwide merger of all the countries you see now. This would give global domination of raw materials and technology, based on the rich oil deposits in the Gulf of Mexico and the Venezuelan region. On top of that, this creation would have almost the world's largest gas reserves located in the US and Canada. But that's just a short list of what this union would have at its disposal. A hypothetical unification of all of North America, including Mexico, the US, and Canada, would create the most powerful country in the world, with which no one could compare for the next few decades. According to estimates for 2021, the US population is about 333 million people, Canada's population is about 38.2 million, and Mexico's population is about 130.2 million. That is a total of 501 million people united in a $26.5 trillion economy, almost 50% more than China.
This trilateral relationship is so impactful. We are stronger and better when we work together, the three of us.
Today, despite the fact that the countries of North America are not a single superpower, they are nevertheless united by a free trade agreement called NAFTA. This agreement was signed in 1994, reducing tariff and trade barriers, while it is currently being replaced by the USMCA agreement. The military, economic, and population rivalry between the United States and China may significantly deepen North American cooperation in the near future, but much also depends on Mexico, whose favor is also increasingly sought by China. That's why I decided to check for you in this episode. How realistic in the near future is the plan to create a North American Union, similar to the one in Europe? Is it possible to create a new American superstate? How the relations between these countries and their cooperation look today. We will also look at how strong militarily and economically a united America would be. You will find the answer to all these questions by watching today's analysis to the end. So let's get started. I have a huge request to you. We have just launched this channel and we would like our videos to reach as many viewers as possible. For this, we also need your subscriptions and thumbs up. If this is not a problem for you and you want to be part of our community, then just do it. Now it's time to continue. The US-Canada border in the form of this long straight line is called the 49th parallel. It stretches 8,891 kilometers and has been called one of the world's most peaceful borders. Nevertheless, it is itself problematic for residents of both countries, as it crosses areas where the population and economy are highly integrated. Plus, at times, it is difficult to distinguish which side of the border one is on, due to its inadequate marking and lack of connection to the real terrain. The penalties for such illegal crossings can be really severe. Some communities are separated by the border and have difficulty moving between the two countries, as well as accessing some public services. For example, residents of the town of Boissevain, located on the Canadian side, complain that they have to drive 45 minutes west to reach the nearest major city in Canada, instead of taking advantage of the services and products offered by cities nearby on the US side. In a similar way, residents of the neighboring town of Dunseith, North Dakota in the US have trouble getting to hospitals and other public services because they are located on the Canadian side and require crossing the border. Despite this, the US and Canada have jointly taken action to take out unidentified objects over Canada in the event of their appearance, and the two countries are cooperating militarily on NATO issues. So yes to military, no to human relations and the economy. Meh, bravo humanity. In the South, on the other hand, there is a completely different problem. The border is literally one big strip of various fences, walls, observation posts, and patrols combing the area to catch illegal smugglers from South American countries. Add to that, of course, the mutual distrust exacerbated by immigration issues, as well as the not-so-distant disputes over the wall.
I believe the steps we will take, starting right now, will improve the safety in both of our countries. It's going to be very, very good for Mexico. A nation without borders is not a nation.
However, the growing power of China and the new vision of the world of authoritarian countries in the near future may change, or rather, unite all of North America. Such steps have already taken place in the past. Serving as a political advisor to Vicente Fox's presidential campaign during Mexico's 2000 general election, Mr. Jorge Castaneda, influenced by the ideas of U.S. academic Robert Pastor, who advocated deeper NAFTA integration, encouraged Fox to include in his campaign an initiative to unite the continent on the style of the European Union. The late Mexican president appeared on several U.S. news programs advocating greater integration, including a plan to open the U.S.-Mexican border within a decade.
No two nations are more important to the immediate prosperity and well-being of one another than Mexico and the United States.
Some in the United States saw this open border proposal as a call for the creation of one big super country. Some Americans as well as Canadians at the time supported the initiative, while others feared that they would have to pour money into developing Mexico, which heated up the poorer part of society in the backward province. To some extent, these fears may indeed have been looking at the wealth of the various states in the Americas. Economically, the South was significantly lagging behind and continues to lag behind the North. But much has changed in recent years, as I will prove to you in a moment. The then Mexican President Vicente Fox also proposed a plan for U.S. President George Bush and the Canadian Prime Minister that he said would move the North American continent toward an economic union along the lines of the European Union. Fox's proposal was rejected by President Bush in 2006. Perhaps then was the best time to do so, as this would have saved the entire world from the 2007 to 2009 crisis, as banks would have taken less credit risk in the context of potential economic changes throughout North America. There is evidence, however, that this plan was seriously studied by both Washington and Ottawa. A diplomatic dispatch from January 2005, which was published by WikiLeaks in 2011, contains a discussion by U.S. government officials on the best approach to North American integration, based on an assessment of Canada's views. The dispatch suggested a new North American initiative that would pursue goals in the areas of security and prosperity through incremental measures, saying such a proposal would get the most support from Canadian policymakers. This later resulted in another agreement involving shared security and increased economic cooperation under the 2011 USMCA, but it's still an initiative far from a viable union, let alone a vision of a single superstate. And here we come to the question of whether this would be worthwhile in this day and age, and whether it is even viable in the coming years. Let's look at the data on the map. The new supercountry or union could be named after the abbreviations of Canada, the US, and Mexico. That is, it would be CANUS-MEX. Globally, it would be the most powerful region, which geopolitically would change the international balance forever. As I mentioned above, a total of 501 million people would live here, which would rank it third in the world just behind China and India. But the prospects for population growth by 2050 could push the population to 620 million people, which, with China's depopulation trend, would almost bring the two countries to equal numbers. CANUS-MEX, however, would have a significant advantage in the availability of key resources. According to available data, the United States produces the most oil in the world. On top of that, it also produces the most gas, the most food, has the third largest reserve of water, which is becoming a key resource, dominates additionally in gold production, and ranks top in other mining and manufacturing areas as well. So far, the argument raised threatening the idea of unification has been Mexico's weak economy, but that per capita is estimated at $10,000. That's not much worse than China. The United States can count on $70,000, but that's a figure pumped mainly by New York, California, and Texas, while Canada's is $52,000 per capita. Thus, one can see quite a gap between the South and the North. However, looking at the European Union in the context of Eastern Europe when it was decided in 2004 to add Poland, the Czech Republic, and the rest of the countries you see on the map, among others, Western Europe was also worried about problems. Ultimately, however, the emergence of the less developed market of Eastern Europe not only developed it itself, but also gave a boost to the West, which in the case of Germany resulted in a growth of the German economy of almost 35%. The United States, wishing to continue in its role as a global hegemon, should keep this in mind. However, for the past 2 decades, ruling teams have been doing their best to wall themselves off from Mexico in the South, a huge threat that China is shrewdly exploiting by establishing itself in South and Central America, where there are already a growing number of countries that have a larger trade balance with the middle state than with the much closer United States. So the gigantic riches that lie beneath Canada and the US would easily make it possible to cover the costs of bringing less developed Mexico into CANUS-MEX. But it would be harder to explain this to voters and people who are also mired in poverty in the States. According to data released by the United States Census Bureau in 2020, the poverty rate in the US was 9.1%, meaning that about 29 million people lived in poverty. However, also taking into account people who are simply poor, these figures are severely underestimated. Only 50% of Americans can actually afford a good standard of living, such as we observe on Instagram. Joe Biden continued the strategy of then-President Donald Trump. Well, according to the new regulations proposed by Biden, the United States would generally deny asylum to migrants who show up at the southern U.S. border without first seeking protection in the country they are passing through.
My message is this. If you're trying to leave Cuba, Nicaragua, or Haiti, or have agreed to begin a journey to America, do not just show up at the border. Stay where you are and apply legally from there. Starting today, if you don't apply through the legal process, you will not be eligible for this.
This topic was discussed with Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador, who met with Joe Biden in early 2023. The Mexican leader also expressed a desire for closer continent-wide cooperation, which clearly indicates that Mexicans have not abandoned the vision of creating something like the European Union. So rejecting the vision of a so-called One America is irrational, all the more so when looking at another important factor. According to the United States Census Bureau's 2020 data, about 62.1 million people of Hispanic or Latino origin lived in the United States. This includes people of various Spanish or Hispanic origins, such as Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans, Colombians, Salvadorans, Guatemalans, Peruvians, Ecuadorians, and many others. In the United States, the Spanish-speaking population is one of the fastest-growing ethnic groups, and by 2050, it will even be about 35–40% of the total population. Washington from immigration will not defend itself if it wants to compete with authoritarianism, and these changes are also needed in the context of the military. With the unification of all three countries of the continent, the Army would have 1,700,000 active personnel and expenditures would reach $820 billion. By comparison, the Chinese army has 2 million soldiers and expenditures of $252 billion, so hypothetically a North American well-organized army with additionally better equipment and deposits of new recruits from Mexico, who have so far toiled in illegal Karelian activities, would for a long time prevent authoritarianism from achieving global domination. The South, however, as mentioned above, has a huge problem with crime and cartels, and Mexico is actually divided into spheres of influence by individual gangs. Currently, the U.S. together with the Mexican authorities are trying to solve this problem, but there is still a long way to go. Nevertheless, production from China is just moving to the Mexican states. Recently, such a step was decided by, for example, Apple. The United States and Canada, if they want North American strength, need Mexico, and Mexico wants to cooperate with them. Nevertheless, the country's second-largest trading partner is China, which is increasingly bold in its attempts to interfere in local frictions and in its attempts to dominate the foreign investment sector. In the event of the emergence of a pro-Chinese government, there will be a real threat to American interests. For the moment, this is not possible, but this option in the future cannot be ruled out. To sum up, in the coming years, the United States is likely to face China over Mexico in terms of broader integration in business. While the main issue now continues to be migration, so much so there are indications that it will soon become a secondary topic to global concerns in the context of peace or climate issues and availability of key elements for development. Let me know what you yourselves think about the vision of a single North American superstate. For my part, that's it. Thanks for today. Stay tuned. Cheers.
Imagine you're a Canadian waking up early tomorrow morning. You're getting ready for work and you're trying to wolf down a bit of breakfast on the way. You turn on the CBC News network to get an idea of what's going on in the world before you head out the door. That's when you hear it. Donald Trump has decided to follow through on his threats to make Canada the 51st American state. The slice of toast in your mouth drops to the floor as Adrienne Arsenault and Rosemary Barton discuss what this might mean for Canada. Will Trump take the nation by military force? Will he put an economic squeeze on Canada? Nobody knows for sure right now. All anybody knows is that Trump has decided that it's time for the Great White North to lose its sovereignty. Does that sound implausible? We don't blame you for thinking so. Just a couple of weeks ago, the mere thought of Canada becoming another American state seemed ludicrous, but it's not so ludicrous anymore. President-elect Donald Trump has claimed that it's something that could happen once he ascends to the US presidency, so we're left with a question. What happens if Trump follows through and tries to claim Canada for the United States? In this video, we explore the comments Trump has made and how he might try to absorb Canada into the United States. We also explore some of the possible impacts of the takeover, both positive and negative, as we ask what if Trump uses force to take over Canada. Let's start with what Trump has been saying. It all started on December 18, 2024. Writing on Truth Social, Trump made some interesting statements about America's relationship with Canada. No one can answer why we subsidize Canada to the tune of over $100 million a year, Trump posted to the social media platform. Makes no sense. Many Canadians want Canada to become the 51st state. They would save massively on taxes and military protection. I think it's a great idea. 51st state. So what? You might think when hearing those comments. Trump says a lot of things off the cuff, and this is no indication that he's intending to use American forces to take over Canada. And it does all sound like a joke. However, fast forward to January 7, 2025, and Trump wasn't about to let the supposed joke lie. Quizzed about his recent comments on Canada, Trump told reporters that he didn't intend to use any type of military force to annex Canada. But economic force, that's another matter. Because Canada and the United States, that would really be something, Trump said. You get rid of that artificially drawn line and you take a look at what that looks like, and it will be much better for the national security. Trump went on to complain that the US is spending hundreds of billions of dollars to help protect Canada, all while it's running a trade deficit. As seems so often the case with Trump, he appears to be viewing America's relationship with the Great White North in pure business terms. He sees Canada as a losing business prospect that's costing the United States money, and he's willing to use force, likely economic, to change the situation. Trump also claims to have spoken to outgoing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau about the prospect of Canada becoming part of the United States. Trudeau has thrown an extra complication into the equation by announcing his intent to resign as Canada's Prime Minister once the ruling party chooses a suitable replacement. Talking about his conversation with Trudeau, Trump said, "We're losing $200 billion per year and more to protect Canada. And I said that too, as I called him Governor Trudeau. I said, listen, what would happen if we didn't subsidize you? He said, Canada would dissolve." Whether Trudeau actually said that is up for debate, but Trump is clearly bullish in his attempts to minimize both Canada and its outgoing Prime Minister. To Trump, Canada is little more than a burden to the United States, one that would become an asset if the US had control over the country. Trudeau's response to all of this conjecture is simple. It's not going to happen. That's what Canada's Prime Minister said when speaking to former White House press secretary and current host of MSNBC's Inside, Jen Psaki. Trudeau said he recognized that Trump sees himself as a successful negotiator, which he uses to keep people off balance with what he says. But when it comes to making Canada the 51st American state, there's simply no chance that Trump will be able to follow through on his rhetoric. Trudeau says that Canadians are likely to reject the very concept of becoming part of the United States too. When defining their national identity, Trudeau claims Canadians will often say, "We're not Americans." In short, there's not a snowball's chance in hell of Canada becoming part of the US, Trudeau claims. But is he right? There's certainly some historical context that shows the US is willing to annex territories, and it's even had squabbles with Canada in the distant past. The two nations were at each other's throats for much of the early American expansion and throughout the 19th century, says The Hill. During the American Revolution, early US leaders staged the invasion of Quebec, lasting from August 1775 to July 1776. That invasion saw the US successfully take Montreal, before George Washington ordered a force of 1,100 soldiers to flank Quebec City. That was a bad move. It required the soldiers to march for 400 miles through freezing cold frontier land for 2 months. By the time the invading American forces reached Quebec City, they'd lost nearly half their number to death and desertion. The US managed to reinforce its units, though the invasion ultimately prompted the arrival of British soldiers who repelled the Americans. The US also attempted an invasion of Canada in 1812 due to the British Royal Navy's attempts to bring American soldiers onto British ships. Again, that was an ill-fated war for the United States. As University of Western Ontario political science professor Matthew Lebo puts it, Canada and the US fought a war over this in 1812. That war, in his view, settled any dispute. Canada is a sovereign nation and shall not become the 51st state. More conflicts between the two nations followed that 1812 war, especially when the American concept of manifest destiny took hold. But the two became staunch allies in the 20th century, with that alliance being reinforced by 2 world wars and both becoming members of NATO. The United States has a history of other forms of expansion in the Americas too. In 1847, the US bought 55% of what was then Mexico as part of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Granted, that treaty came on the back of a terrible war between the US and Mexico. But even in victory, America was to pay $15 million to Mexico, equivalent to about $577 million today, to secure the territory. That single treaty saw the US claim the present-day states of Utah, New Mexico, Nevada, California, Kansas, Wyoming, Oklahoma, Colorado, and Arizona. In other words, the US is willing to buy land after winning a war, a fact Canada should keep in mind. Trump might try to make Canada an offer he believes it can't refuse. There's also War Plan Red to consider. Concocted in 1930, this was America's plan to invade its ally Canada should the two nations ever come to blows, and it was detailed. America planned to launch a 3-pronged assault, attacking Canada by land and sea. A naval blockade of Halifax would cause issues for British troops arriving to support Canada, while 2 columns of US soldiers would march from Detroit and Albany to take Toronto and Montreal respectively. More soldiers would follow, eventually taking Halifax. America even drafted in famous aviation pioneer Charles Lindbergh to help with the plan. Lindbergh took part in secret reconnaissance missions, flying over Canada to identify its weak points before reporting back. Bear in mind that the US and Canada had just fought together in World War I and would soon be allies again when World War II rolled around. We share all of this to make a simple point. Trump's mention of making Canada the 51st American state aren't completely unheard of. The US tried to do that for much of the 19th century and parts of the century that came before. Even when the two countries became staunch allies in the 20th century, the US was still drawing up plans on how to invade Canada should it ever feel the need. Perhaps a modern-day equivalent to War Plan Red still exists. We may never know, but that does bring us to the next question that we'll ask in this video. What happens if Trump decides to take Canada by force? We can divide the answer into two potential approaches, military and economic. The former is something that Trump has already said the US won't do, but we can't discount the possibility that the US and Canada could go to war if Trump attempts to force an annexation. And if that happens, it's likely we'll see a clear American victory. According to Global Firepower, or GFP, which ranks 145 militaries annually based on around 60 factors, the United States has the most powerful military in the world. Canada is pretty strong too, but it's a long way behind the US, coming in at 28th on GFP's list. No matter where you look, the US comes out on top. It has available manpower of 150.4 million people to Canada's 16.68 million, resulting in almost 125 million Americans being fit for service versus just 13.5 million Canadians. That manpower disparity follows through to each country's active military, with the US dwarfing Canada in that area. America's active military has 1.328 million people, with another 799,500 in reserve, versus a Canada that only brings 68,000 active service people, 27,000 reserves, and 5,500 paramilitary forces to the battle. Don't underestimate the importance of this manpower advantage. The US would look to cross the border into Canada via land in multiple locations, forcing Canada to be at a manpower disadvantage across the entire front of any direct war between the two. The US is also a long way ahead of Canada when it comes to equipment. It has 13,043 aircraft to Canada's 351, making it easy for the US to achieve aerial dominance in practically every location it invades. The US also brings 4,640 tanks and 391,963 armored vehicles to the land battle, again decimating Canada's respective totals of 74 tanks and 21,704 vehicles. Perhaps Trump is onto something when he says that the United States is propping up Canada militarily, because this war has all of the ingredients of a whitewash. Canada also isn't able to compete on the naval front, with its fleet only containing 73 assets versus America's 440. The US also brings 11 aircraft carriers to the war. Canada has none, 66 more submarines and 81 powerful destroyers that could easily sink most of Canada's navy. The simple fact is that Canada would lose handily if the US decided to invade using its military. But there is one complication for Trump if he goes down this route: NATO. Trump has often claimed that he'll pull the US out of NATO unless the organization's other members start spending more on their militaries. But as it stands right now, the US and Canada are both members of the Collective Defense Organization, which would cause major complications should America invade Canada. Who did the other 30 members of the organization support? An invasion of Canada would typically trigger Article 5 of the organization's charter, which says that all NATO members are duty-bound to come to the direct aid of any other member that faces an attack on its own soil. But Article 5 doesn't account for that attack coming from a fellow NATO member. Of course, Trump could remove this complication by withdrawing from NATO before attacking Canada, but that simplicity could be his undoing, as that would mean essentially going to war with 30 other countries to achieve his militaristic goals in the Great White North. Excluding the United States, NATO has about 1.5 million active soldiers, meaning it could stack up well against the United States on the manpower front. Of course, most of those soldiers are in Europe. Leaving would create more problems, as it would mean Europe is not well defended against Russian President Vladimir Putin's territorial ambitions. Whether the US is a NATO member or not when Trump invades Canada, the organization is going to be a big problem for the US. And it's not just NATO. As The Conversation pointed out in a January 9th article, the US would face a seismic backlash from the rest of the world if it invaded Canada. Fellow Commonwealth nations, including Britain, Australia, and New Zealand, would likely come to Canada's aid with economic and logistical support. Public opinion would turn against the US. After all, if Trump is willing to invade one of America's closest allies, what would stop it from turning its attention to other supposed friends down the line? A US invasion of Canada would be a major propaganda victory for Russia and China. Each country could enhance its standing by pointing to America having imperialistic ambitions, allowing them to not only justify their own actions, Russia in Ukraine and potentially China in Taiwan, but also influence other nations to not deal with the US in the future. In short, a military invasion of Canada would carry some severe consequences for the US. That's probably why Trump says he'd rather use economic force to make Canada the 51st state. But what would that version of a Canadian takeover look like? Tariffs would likely be the incoming US president's trump card, if you'll excuse the pun. He's already claimed that he'll slap a 25% tariff on Canada until it secures its border with the United States. If he truly intends to take over Canada, there's nothing stopping him from applying more economic pressure by raising those tariffs and applying them to as many Canadian goods as possible. And those tariffs would certainly create pressure. The Office of the United States Trade Representative says that the US imported $481.2 billion in goods and services from Canada in 2022. It exported a slightly smaller amount, $427.7 billion, to create a $53.5 billion trade deficit. So Trump's tariffs would affect hundreds of billions of dollars of Canadian exports. Of course, those tariffs would hurt American consumers. Tariffs are essentially taxes placed on imported goods when they cross the border into the US. Canada's response might be to apply tariffs of its own while it raises the price of its imported goods. Trump would hope that American importers would choose US-made goods or import from countries that don't have tariffs placed on them, to ramp up the economic pressure he places on Canada. But Trump has tools other than tariffs that he could use as part of his economic force approach. Capping how much the US pays for energy and similar resources it purchases from Canada could be another approach, according to Carleton University Professor of International Affairs Fen Osler-Hampson. These caps would mirror the likes of those that Western nations have placed on Russian oil, thus limiting the flow of foreign currency, in this case American dollars, into Canada, and damaging the economy. Normally, you only do that with a country that you're at war with or in a major conflict with, Hampson says. But again, it's a potential tool, and there is presidential authority to do it now. Trump may be able to take advantage of presidential rules established in the wake of Putin's invasion of Ukraine to hurt Canada economically with these caps, and hurt it would. The US Energy Information Administration says that around 60% of America's crude oil imports originate in Canada, with that number having risen from 33% over the last decade. Combine a cap on the amount the US pays for that oil with a tariff on the resource as it crosses the border, and you get a 1-2 economic punch that could cost Canada billions. Of course, Canada might respond by simply finding new customers for its crude oil and other energy resources. There will be no shortage in Europe, which is always looking for new suppliers to move it further away from Russian-controlled energy infrastructure. The Financial Post says that other potential measures could include preventing Canadian businesses from doing business in the United States. Asset sieges and sanctions akin to what we've seen the US apply to Russia could also be options for Trump, though they'll perhaps be less impactful than he'd like, given that he won't have the entire West's support for his attempted annexation. Still, sanctions from the US alone could cause serious damage to Canada's economy, even with the prospect of the Great White North replying with similar economic measures of its own. But Trump may not need to go that far. As Hampson explains, the two-way flow of trade is almost $1 trillion, and that is one of the most important trading relationships in the world. Tariffs might be a strong enough economic force to result in Canada capitulating to Trump's demands. By the time the damage of that particular bushfire is put out, there may be less to burn, Hampson adds. The downside to this strategy is that the US is far from the only country to which Canada can sell its goods. Yes, we'll take a hit, Hampson concludes, but there are other places in the world where we can sell what we have. How quickly Canada is able to build those new trade relationships while dealing with the pressure created by Trump's economic force approach would likely determine whether the US is actually able to annex Canada. Let's assume it does. Trump, either militaristically or through economic pressure, manages to force Canada to become the 51st American state. What happens next? A complete change in Canada's culture will likely follow. Its political systems would have to transform, with the country's own provinces and territories becoming massive counties. Alternatively, Trump could divide his new state along its current province and territory lines, essentially delivering 13 new states to the US rather than just one. Countrywide, Canada would also have to deal with the loss of its publicly funded national healthcare system and the changing of gun ownership rules. Both are things that Canadians take great pride in, but they would disappear as American systems come into force. There would be a complete change in the Canadian culture, and that likely won't sit well with many of Trump's new subjects. Despite the incoming US president's claims that many Canadians want Canada to become the 51st state, it appears that the reality demonstrates anything but. BuzzFeed, so often a gossip website, provided some useful insight into the Canadian attitude to an American takeover in a January 9th article in which it covered the reactions of 24 Canadians to Trump's annexation comments. Some, such as a commentator named Aquamizu, believe Canada would reject the annexation on social and cultural grounds. "I'm Canadian," they said. "Hell to the no, I don't want to be American. No one I know wants to be American. I'm not giving up my free healthcare and strict gun laws, and I'm definitely not giving up my right to choose as a woman." Others were even more extreme, claiming that they believe Trump is using Canada, along with Mexico and Panama, to deflect blame away from issues that may be created when Trump takes the presidency. Some Canadians even believe that electing Trump represents the US taking its first step toward becoming an autocratic society. Whether you believe these comments or not, the consensus seems to be that most in Canada don't want to become American. That lack of desire could lead to revolts and internal revolutionary movements forming should Trump succeed in making the Great White North the 51st state. But hey, at least the trade problems would go away. The US would own all Canadian resources, with the elimination of the border between the two nations meaning the US no longer has to import and export, can just use or sell everything that Canada produces. To Trump, that would mean the US is also finally recouping its money for supposedly protecting Canada for so many years. Canada might also benefit from this easier trade, though it's difficult to predict the true economic impact absorbing the country into the US would have on either nation. So what do you think about Trump's comments about annexing Canada? Is he serious? And if he is, how do you think he'll go about turning Canada into the 51st state? Share your thoughts in the comments section below, and thank you for watching the video.
Our next set of questions comes from Joe at Global News. The city of Winnipeg has been operating its in-house gyms exclusively for employees during the level red. The city says it got permission to do so from the province. Can you confirm the city was given permission and why?
So we weren't given, specific permission. Our public health orders don't apply to any levels of government. So they don't apply to federal, provincial, or municipal governments. So, so I am aware of health inspectors had visited some of these gyms and found them safe. But the real issue, they weren't given an exemption outside of the order. The order itself doesn't apply to governments.
Second question, so why can't small apartments or condo or family gyms operate following the same guidelines used by the city?
Well, this is the same thing about how quickly we open things up, right? It always comes down to this. So we expect governments to be able to regulate, and so we're not going to tell governments how they function. And so if they feel that they could have a limited capacity and run these gyms for their employees for certain reasons, then we're not regulating that. When we open it up to the public, then it becomes many more Manitobans involved in it, many more centers. And so it's, again, we're getting back to where we were in October and November. We constantly hear from Manitobans, from businesses about how safe their operation is. And I certainly don't doubt their efforts and the protocols they have. It's just that where were we in October and November? Everyone was doing their best. Everyone was committed. But despite that, we saw that dramatic climb in our numbers. And so.
Okay, the reason why I put that in there was so that you can see again how the government says that, hey, the COVID measures and the laws don't apply to them. They are above the law. So for those who never seen this, we have to show our government that, no, they are not above the law. So I'm just going to go to the next one here. Share this tab here. Now, I'm just going to come back. And I have to kind of stop share here. Okay, and then go to the next one. There we go. Share. Okay, so I'm just going to do a little something here so you can see me. Okay, so hello again. So anyways, the question was asked, can we do this? Can we change, like as I was commenting in the chat, is that we can, if Canadians are smart enough, we can turn taxation into dividends. And yes, we can very much do that. And how can we do that? Well, as a shareholder, because really by law, we are each a one shareholder across Canada, all Canadian citizens and the Indigenous peoples. We are all a shareholder in this. But really, on our side, So we have a 1 vote share in everything that happens in Canada. And that goes for our corporations and everything else. So as long as we have King Charles there, we don't get to be able to do that. And we are only slaves to the corporations and the government. So, April 17th, 1982, legally and by rights, we were made the collective shareholders of this country. And yet the government said nothing, and then they took over the governance without even asking the people what we wanted to do. What kind of governance did we want? We had the choice to decide at that point. But why would anybody give up the chance of being, the collective head of state, where we'd have, the same rights as the crown to be able to make some decisions if our government is going rogue? So we need government. We can't get away from government. But the monarchy, I showed you the other day, the monarchy is still a much better system than a republic, because then you'd have all the crap like you see in the United States. And if, a president dies, well, then all hell breaks loose, right? And well, in a monarchy, it doesn't. It just gets passed to the next one, and then the government keeps going. So the only ones who could replace a monarchy are the people. Okay? As long as we have we the people and our governance, it doesn't matter if a prime minister gets thrown out tomorrow. Nothing falls apart except for Parliament. It's like when they go on vacation for the summer. The country doesn't fall apart. Everybody knows what to do. We just need our politicians to stop being the final decision makers, when really they're not supposed to be. They're supposed to work for the people. They owe us a fiduciary duty, and legally we can all take that back. We have that right, but we need the people to want it. And if the people don't, then there's nothing we can do about it. And that's why it's so important. The question was asked, can we do this on our own without needing the 51%? Yeah, we can, because but that would take a court case, and to be able to challenge that in court. And then you need to know exactly everything that I know to be able to pull it off. And as well as getting the support of the how can I say, the Human Rights Foundation with our rights, and making sure that nobody tries to override us. So, right now we have bought and paid for justices. We've seen that for the last 4 years. So which justice are we going to get? And are they going to follow the rule of law? Right now, everybody's given up on the rule of law. So it's up to us to do it. So now there's something else going on in Canada that is just as bad, and all interconnected. Okay. So you have to know exactly who's all interconnected in this. So I wanted to show you again the Oz website. What I did is I put this video together so that you'll be able to make decisions in regards to the fact that the Conservatives and the Liberals are one of the same. Okay. And Pierre Poilievre and Justin Trudeau ended up at a Jewish 1 year celebration of the October 7th. Okay. Like, who the hell would want to celebrate that? But anyways, it makes it for very interesting stuff. But what you need to know is who is behind all of this, who is really behind the WEF. And that yes, there are two sides pretending that they're one against the other. But in the end, when you know what the BRICS entails, that yes, they want to keep going with the climate change and saving the planet, and the CBDC, the digital ID, all of these things. And now that when you look at Trump and them, then you have to see why Peter Thiel and Elon Musk and everybody wants to be able to control, the entirety of the minerals and everything for their plans for AI and all this, and Peter Thiel, who wants to have the same, the control over the digital ID, like the system that China has. So again, you've got two sides. So they're all used to try to confuse people, and in the end, neither are for the people. So we have a solution that if all the countries did it, we all have the same rights, we all have that legal stance. And if we can have some justices that have some more moral dignity, we might be able to get somewhere and change the future of everybody forever, and everybody could benefit from their own natural resources. So right now, the United States wants our resources. They don't care about the people. You think Trump cares about you? Not at all. He's a pathological liar. That's been proven. So anybody who loves him because of what he said, please remember, all the things he said that he's never done. Don't give him the benefit of the doubt just because you like what he said. If Lucifer was to say something good that would please you, would you all of a sudden join Lucifer? Think about that. So why do we need to join anybody anyway? We are Canadian citizens. We own our natural resources, and we can make sure that our government no longer goes rogue, no longer has the ability to do any kind of corruption in government. If they really want to be able to work for the people, then they need to become honest. And a political party does not work for the people. It works for their party and the corporations that they themselves get funded, that they themselves fund our politicians. And then you'll see this in the next one. Stephen Harper, Brian Mulroney. So there's a lot of things you guys don't know. So before you make any comments, make any kind of decisions, you need to understand Canada's history. And you need to understand some of the things. And we can't trust anybody but ourselves to ensure that nobody tries to take over our country, our natural resources. And yes, we can turn taxation into dividends. And yes, we would be allowed to be able to decide what corporations and the banks can and cannot do in Canada. And then we could go back to using our own Bank of Canada and no longer have debts like we didn't have prior to 1974. Okay, we can fix it all. And then we can take the $102 billion that the Canadian government voted itself to take on top of the monies that they needed to take for our budgets and for expenses that they voted themselves in for 24, 25. So we can force them to put that towards our economy. Okay. Do we need to bow down to Mr. Trump? Hell no. They need us more than we need them. And that's a fact. And other countries, the United States is going down, people. And that's reality. And that's why they're doing all this. So in regards to the country, and they're going to need somebody to blame. Well, they're going to blame the people who voted for Trump. Okay. In the end. I'm ready to bet on that. Okay. I would seriously bet on that. But again, time will tell. People can change their minds. Things can happen. And he can feel some pressure. And then he can back off. Right. So we don't know what's going to happen. All we can do is focus on us, what we can do in Canada, how we can secure our futures and the future of our children, and help all of the other countries do the same thing, including the American people. Okay, so we're just going to have a look at this here. And I'm going to see if I can get it. Okay, videos, hang on here. Share screen. And Oz and Polyev, yes, share. Oh, I already got that. Now, I hope you can all see this. I'm just going to go over and make sure. No, you can't see it yet. So there we go. And okay. So this here, I'm going to have to go back to where it is. Okay. So this here is a video I made. There's no voice to this, but I'm going to read it. It says, this is from the Oz, AWZ ventures.com website. And it says, our team, people first. Okay, well, they're not talking about Canadian citizens here. Okay, so headquartered in Toronto, Canada, with offices in Israel and the US, the Oz Global team is made up of elite security and investment professionals with dedicated GP teams on the ground in Israel for each of our funds. Now, our partners and strategic advisors, so I'm just going to turn it on here. Okay, so it'll just let it play here because I'm supposed to read as it goes. So now our partners and strategic advisors are entrepreneurs with a history of successful exits, seasoned investment professionals, and former senior directors of Israeli and global security and intelligence agencies like the CIA, FBI, MI5, CSIS, Mossad, Shin Bet, and Unit 8200, bringing strong technology. Okay, so here you have Yaron Ashkenazi, who is the founder. And then look at this, Right Honorable Stephen Harper, Edward Sunshine, Dame Stella Remington, former MI5 director. Then you have Richard Fadden, former CSIS director, James Woolsey, former CIA director, Tamir Pardo, former director of Mossad, Buck Revel, former FBI associate deputy director, Richard Nesbitt, strategy advisor, financial services, Ronit Atad, strategic advisor, Jacob Frankel, strategic advisor. And sometimes it goes a little bit too fast. But anyways, Professor Leonardo Liederman, Professor Michael Halberthal, and Peretz Levy and Daniel Mack, Avi Libman, Josh Gutenberg. Okay, so you have to really see where these people are all coming from. So Dr. Amira Sharon and Ranbar Orr, Offer Cinchoni, Howard Tannenbaum, Kenny Finkelstein, Ronnie Faust, okay, Murray Goldman, Howard Sokolowski, Rick Eichstein, Aaron Mandelbaum, and then Miguel Singer, Eric Kreiner, and this is venture partner. Okay, Ventures 1 and 2, and Osher Shapira, Brigadier General, I didn't get to see his last name. So anyways, Ron Lubash, Ronnie Alshike. And again, this is XC. This is another department of Oz. So once you kind of go down here, how many of you have heard of these people? So again, Ambassador Yuval Roten, where is he from? So again, you have a lot of military personnel here, or people that were working with the military. So I'm just going to advance this. Are we almost done? Okay, Nadine Miller, Errol Zamir, Patrice, David Poslam, never heard of him. And these are all strategic advisors. Where are they from? We don't know, right? But I'll bet you they all come from one area. Andrew Goldman, David Amsalem, Ilana Schwartz, Nira Kakiris. So again, who are these people? What are they doing? So I'm just going to bring this a little bit forward. Again, there's more and more. And then, again, my thing is like Stephen Harper. Well, hello, So now I brought it down to the final ones. But look, see, okay, so Oz is located in Canada, Israel, and the United States. And then again, when you think of Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump, then you have to go back to the fact that they both lied about why, the war in Gaza ended. It was because of the military backing down and the Israeli people all against Netanyahu. So again, without that, we wouldn't be able to. We'd probably all believe the lies of Bibi Netanyahu and Donald Trump. So they are extremely well connected. Again, when Donald Trump called BB names, that was just, again, a whole bunch of BS to make you think that they're one against the other, and Donald Trump is not actually. I would say something very nasty here, but I'm not going to say it. Um, in the pocket, let's say, of Bibi Netanyahu, because that's how the world has been going. So you look at all of these corporations that are involved in this, okay? And this is why they've already done the North American Union. They're coming after us now to finalize the last pull to make us responsible for the natural resources. If you look at, if you go back and read the stuff, the first book from um, John Manley, as well as Pastor, Robert Pastor, they had written about it. The first book was in regards to the North American Union, and the actually it was done at York University here in Canada, in Ontario, and the Bank of the head of the Bank of Canada actually walked out when he found out that they want to create a bank run by the United States with Canada and Mexico, and Canada's natural resources would be up for grabs for the debt or whatever this corporation, this new bank would need. So now we can look and see that it's actually Bitcoin was part of that, but they called it Amero. Then they called it Bitcoin, and they're making everybody think that, oh, somebody invented this. Well, it all comes from the governments and the tech billionaires that you see there, the tech boys that are behind Trump. So again, you have to kind of know exactly what was transpiring in 2008 with this. And the fast track between Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. is another system of that North American Union, and they were trying to split the whole planet into 7 to 10 pieces. The European Union that was created in 1983 with George Bush Senior, and also Brian Mulroney was part of that. All of those meetings. So you again, people who are making judgment calls, obviously don't know the past, don't know exactly what's going on. But here, Canada, Israel, and United States. Israel controls the United States. That's a well-known fact. They also control us. And we also have, we donate monies to Israel in as far as anything that they need. And not to mention, again, Stephen Harper, partner and president of Advisory Committee, served as Canada's 22nd Prime Minister for nearly 10 years, winning 3 consecutive national elections, chairman and CEO of Harper and Associates, a global strategic advisory firm. He is also the author of Right Here, Right Now, Politics and Leadership in the Age of Disruption, chairs the International Democrat Union, the IDU.org, the Global Alliance of Conservative Political Parties, as well as the Friends of Israel Initiative.
And as we traveled along, though, I realized that this was the most scientifically, democratically, and politically advanced country in the world. Incredible. Think of what they built. There are more Israeli companies on the high-tech NASDAQ exchange than there are companies from all of the continent of Europe, which is literally 100 times bigger than Israel. The medical technologies, the softwares, the artificial intelligence that Israelis have invented. I mean, there's a little bit more in artificial intelligence in the Canadian government, but it's a different type. I came home from that trip, though, determined to stand with my friends in Israel, and not long after that, I joined with B'nai B'rith and then the Canada-Israel Committee, now CIJA, and we launched a full-scale campaign to criminalize Hezbollah, which up until that time was completely legal in Canada. the Jewish people have stood with me in my journey through politics. Some of my best friends and greatest advisors, including our very own deputy leader, Melissa Landsman, now helps me lead the charge in Parliament for our shared values. Many times our focus is on domestic, cutting the taxes, building the homes, fixing the budget, stopping the crime. Sometimes it's international. But we know that over the last several months since October 7th, it has been necessary for us to turn our attention to the defense of our shared values, of our eternal values. Think of the trash can of history. It is filled with those who have tried and failed to destroy the Jewish people. From the Pharaoh to the Haman, to the totalitarian socialist dictators of Hitler and Stalin, all of them have been defeated. And yet the Jewish people still go on. I don't know what the world will bring tomorrow. I don't know, much less 100 years from now. But I do know this, that 1,000 years from now, whatever is going on Fridays, as the sun goes down, there will be a Shabbat in Israel. Those songs will still be sung. The Jewish people will go on, and they will still say, Am Yisrael Chai. Thank you.
Okay, so here, what do we have? Canada is so nice that you can invest in Israel bonds, and up to $102,000 a year, tax-free. So this is what we do for Israel. So now, I have no problems with the Jewish people sending money to their families, but I draw the line where, the Jewish people as Canadians who are getting, this tax exemption is not the same, it is not given to Canadians themselves. So why is Israel getting this break and then having the Zionists here in Canada sending monies, investing in Israel and backing it up and then throwing us into a situation where we could be at war with other countries because of what Israel does? So I don't agree that as Canadian citizens that there should be any preferences here. But anyways, it's really sad, sad that this is actually happening and that we have to put up with this. Everybody should be equals in Canada. The Jewish people, the Zionists, should not be allowed to be to have such exemptions from Canada when it's not given to the rest of Canadians. So our taxation, to me, this is like how can I say? It's actually to me that should be illegal because it would be the same thing as actually going through the offshore accounts. So if offshoring and hiding your taxes is illegal, why is this legal? So again, I have really big problems with these issues here. And the thing is many of the countries do the same. And when you talk about Israel, they've infiltrated over 100 governments. They're behind the WEF as well, a lot of their stuff. So everything that you've heard tonight, you need to really, really think, but again, this is not the fault of the Jewish people. This has been done has been being done for a very long time. And I'm just going to stop sharing there. And there we are. So anyways, Who's going to challenge that? I don't know. But the thing is as Canadians, and we get our rights, because right now we don't have the right to challenge anything other than complaining, and then the government doesn't need to listen to us. So if you think that things are going to change with Pierre Poilievre, you better check again. Okay. And if you don't think that, if you're looking at Danielle Smith and her with Stephen Harper in the background, be very afraid. Who do I fear the most? These people. Not Trump. Okay. That's just minute. And but the thing is these the people in our provincial leaders and our parliamentarians are more dangerous to us right now than anybody else on the planet. Okay. And as far as I'm concerned, Danielle Smith, okay, has got a lot of things that she's hiding. I don't think she's 100% pure. And if she's supporting Stephen Harper, these are the conservatives, people, whether they're provincial conservatives or pretending they're at odds. It's again a show. The only way we're going to know for sure what we can rely on is to go to the cpu.ca or to canadianreferendum.ca, sign your referendum, join as a referendum community member, or support the CPU as a VIP member, where a little bit of the magic happens, that I call, where you have more access to me than anything else. That's where I'm spending my times, and that's why I'm not allowing so much to be able to be said in. I'm not doing any more posts. I don't have time to start answering people, repeating myself with people who don't want to go and read anything. So I figured, okay, well, we really do need to give everybody a chance to do right, but it'll only happen once the Canadian citizens get together, sign the referendum en masse. Okay, huge amounts of people. And we can even do challenges, but we need funding for that. And we need people to help us with funding. And if you want to help us with funding, you have 4 family members, get them to sign and all join in to the as community members. So, instead of donations, this is what you can do. Bring in as many people as you can. You can, instead of a donation, you can pay to get 4 people in at $100, or 5 people in, how many you want of your family members. But we need to get together and we need to get this done, and we need to get a lot of signatures. And when you donate to the CPU, that you have all of the information listed on the Canadian referendum website. You can donate directly to Interact e-transfer. You can donate on our donations pages, and nobody gets that information. Okay. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to be afraid. And then I thought, well, we're having a problem because it seems like people don't understand, that we need funding to do all this, and to finalize it and to bring it along. Everything costs money. I know a lot of people say, oh, well, I'm always fed up of having to pay. Well, listen, what kind of a sacrifice is it to become an official shareholder of your country and to make sure that your interests are put first instead of the interests of political parties and corporations? It's a small investment to make so that we can get this done. So again, we need your support. You want us to be able to go further? We need your support. You need to be involved in this. You need to start learning. And that's what happens when you join as a referendum community member or a CPU member. And again, it's to your benefit and to the benefit of your children, because you can pass around, all the paperwork that we have. But everybody needs to learn how to take care of this country if you want to be able to have a say in this country. You can't just be shooting off your mouth or saying all kinds of things that you're not even sure. You didn't even go and read the information yourself to know if it was true or not. So we have enough propaganda going around that you don't need to use that. And, we need to do this right. And we can do this right. And we're all equals here. Human beings are all equals. So nobody has any more rights than anybody else. And we can learn to live together in that manner. And as the official shareholders, we're all shareholders. So this is not about mob rule. It's about all the shareholders taking care of business the right way. And that's how it should have been done to begin with. But people, nobody's ever learned since the Greeks. Okay, we're always making the same mistakes over and over and over again. The only ones who can replace the crown are the Canadian citizens, or any, it's the people as a whole that can make it work, as much as the life of the crown keeps going. Instead of having shoddy, politicians and politics the way that republics have. I would never want to become a republic, but the monarchy does have something worth holding on to, which is that kind of system. But we become the head of state, because that's the only way we're going to have our rights. Okay, so until the Conservatives tell me they're willing to sign the referendum, or any politician out there, I will never trust them. Okay, only politicians who are okay with handing over the country to its rightful owners, we the people, and they are shareholders too, would be worth voting for. Okay, anyone else? Nah, they are just hypocrites. They're in there for themselves, and they want to rule, not the people. So they need to stop lying to us. They need to stop saying that, oh, they are for the people. If they are for the people, they will sign the Canadian referendum and make sure that we have our rights recognized, and that they know that they could no longer do what they've been doing as before. So I'm going to leave you with that. Have yourselves a great evening and the rest of the weekend. But before I go, I want to tell you that, first of all, Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre were at the exact same dinner where Pierre was speaking, and Trudeau did speak as well. So, Tim Pate, I'm sorry, but whatever bullshit you think this is, you need to get educated, okay? So good luck with that. Anyways, good night, everybody. There's always one around, okay? And someday we'll be able to get everything straightened out and people educated, and hopefully we'll have a better country. So thank you, and have a great weekend. Bye-bye. The CPU.ca and CanadianReferendum.ca. Bye.
Attention, Canadians. Do you feel disconnected from our current political system? This could be our last chance to take a real legal stand for our rights. It's time to shift the political power to its rightful owners, the Canadian citizens and Indigenous peoples of Canada. Dive into our history, understand the need for change, and embark on the quest for true democracy. Are you concerned about our nation's commitment to human rights and self-governance? The power shift to freedom aligns with vital treaties and international laws enabling us to claim our rightful place as collective head of state. We advocate legally replacing the crown, King Charles III, and our partocracy system with a true democracy, the peoples as the true collective head of state with veto power over our governance, to ensure your voice counts more than party interests. When our national collective civil and political rights are respected, your influence on policies will be direct and impactful. Join us on this noble struggle to make every Canadian and Indigenous peoples a meaningful participant in our future as collective head of state, which was legally owed and kept from us since the patriation of our Constitution, an official decolonization from the United Kingdom of 1982. It's time to correct the past of our government's lies and omissions to the people of our great country before it is too late. People 15 years old and over can sign our Canadian People's Referendum at canadianreferendum.ca and unite for our rights as the collective head of state in our Constitution. Together, we can be the example in reshaping Canada's future, not just for us, but for all peoples worldwide, once and for all. Are you ready to be part of this transformative movement? Join the Power Shift to Freedom movement by the Canadian People's Union and be part of a bold vision for Canada's future. Visit thecpu.ca for more details. Embrace and face the change required on your part to shape our future.